and welcome to the Support for Caregiver Awareness, Learning, and Empowerment, or SCALE 8-week webinar series that aims to empower you with practical information and skills by enhancing your self-awareness and focusing on your own needs to improve your mental health as a caregiver. My name is Joy McLeod, and I became a caregiver in 2015 when my dad sustained a high-level spinal cord injury. I discovered the Ontario Caregiver Organization during the pandemic and have been volunteering with the peer support program since 2022. As you know by now, I'm incredibly passionate about SCALE, and I'm so grateful that you've been able to join us over the last 2 months. Today's webinar topic is creating meaningful connections. Relationships and connections are one of our basic needs as human beings, and the responsibilities of caregiving often leave caregivers feeling isolated from their friends and community. This week, the final week of SCALE, will support you in addressing feelings of loneliness and will provide tools that can help you rediscover and maintain connections that are important to you. Before we begin, I just wanted to take a moment to share that the OCO carries out its work while acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are on today. This land is home to many First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people, and acknowledging this reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous people. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker today. I'm pleased to introduce Michal Goldstein. She is a clinical social worker and therapist with over 15 years of experience in supporting individuals, couples, and families to build stronger, healthier, and more meaningful connections and relationships. She is also the owner and founder of Creating Connections Counseling Service, a virtual therapy practice based out of Toronto, where she and her team of therapists help individuals and families to rediscover and thrive within their challenging life circumstances. Michal's professional understanding of the impact of caregiving on one's health and well-being and her personal caregiving experiences led her to extensive work with the Ontario Caregiver Organization and fuels her passion to support caregivers to navigate their challenging circumstances. Thank you so much for joining us, Michal, and I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Joy. It's so nice to be here and be back with the OCO. Welcome to the last week of the SCALE webinar series. We've been together now for 8 weeks discussing the experience of caregiving and strong emotions that come up within this role. Another aspect of the program that we have is the counseling support. Please note that the group support is still going on for this week and next week, despite the fact that this is our last week of the webinar. So you can still register for those groups. You can take a picture of this QR code, which will take you to our booking site, or you can reach out to us by email, through our website, or by phone in order to connect to us around any questions you might have or to register for the counseling. If you feel that you require immediate support at any point, whether now or even after the program is over, please reach out to a crisis helpline. While the counseling is there to provide you with ongoing support, sometimes emotions get really strong and we really need support in the moment. And so please reach out if you feel that that is something that you require. Along with the counseling, we also will provide you with a workbook that you will receive after the webinar. And in this workbook, there are a number of different resources that you can continue to explore the topic that we speak about today. Throughout the webinar, you might see this icon, this journal icon that's on the screen right now. And that will alert you to the fact that whatever we are discussing at the time will also be included in the workbook, and you can further explore through the workbook. So our topic today, as Joy shared, is feelings of loneliness that come up within your role as a caregiver. As caregivers, you are constantly pouring your heart and soul into your role. And that's often naturally at the expense of your own well-being, and that includes your social connectiveness. Our goal for today is really to focus on the feelings of loneliness that come up within caregiving and to try to provide you with some tools to rediscover your connections, to maintain some meaningful connections you have now. Loneliness and feelings of isolation are not only a common experience within caregiving, but it's a normal experience within caregiving. Just the mere weight of caregiving and the responsibilities that you have as a caregiver often just practically leaves very little room for maintaining the personal connections that you have. And so in turn, it's easy to feel really isolated from your friends and family and your broader community. So much of the importance for us in the entire SCALE program has been about bringing caregivers together, both in the support groups and here in the webinars, to really share in the common experiences of caregiving in the effort to really address this exact feeling of loneliness, right? So I'm hoping that, through our weeks together, you've come to this place of feeling a little bit less lonely in your journey, but we really want to put more of a concentrated focus and effort around this area today. So understanding loneliness within the role is understanding a number of different aspects of caregiving that might be contributing to your experience of loneliness. Caregiving is an all-consuming experience, right? You're managing medical appointments, you're providing daily care, you're managing your care recipients' emotions, you're managing your own emotions, and your days are filled with constant responsibilities that are revolving around your care recipients' needs. So naturally, you might feel lonely, right? As you're just busy, consistently busy, right? And your personal interests end up taking a backseat to the needs of your care recipient. So I want to go through a few aspects of what might be contributing to this for you. So the first one is what we practically talked about, just a lack of time and energy. It's not just about the physically demanding nature of your role, but it's also emotionally exhausting to be a caregiver, right? You're constantly balancing your emotions with the emotions of your care recipient and potentially other external family members as well. So the more you give to caregiving, the more you feel drained and the more isolated that you will feel just from a practical sense. The emotional weight of caregiving is extremely significant and deserves its own attention here in terms of how it contributes to your loneliness. While you are feeling overwhelmed by the emotional strain of caring for your care recipient, alongside this, there's a whole aspect of guilt that can creep in for you. Guilt when you're wanting to actually lean into your social connections. Guilt for wanting a break, for feeling frustrated, for not being able to meet every expectation. And this emotional burden that you end up feeling can really create barriers between you and the people within your social world, which is going to naturally make it difficult for you to express yourself, express your true feelings, connect on an emotional level with other people. I'm wondering if anyone can relate to this, that finding themselves feeling guilty for needing time for themselves, for not being able to meet all the expectations and all the needs, and then feeling guilty for wanting or needing something for themselves, including this aspect of social connection. This can really be a significant impactor for caregivers in creating the connections that you need for your ongoing support, right? If I'm feeling guilty every time I want to leave my home and go reach out and spend time with a friend and step away from my care recipient, then when is that time going to happen, right? When am I going to actually take that time? So just take a moment now to think for yourself how much of a role guilt really is playing for you in being able to maintain your relationships outside of caregiving, your relationship with yourself and your relationship with others. your sense of self, your community supports, the activities you enjoy, the connections those activities bring. Try to keep this in your mind as we continue the webinar today, and think about what aspects of guilt are playing into this for you. What am I noticing that I'm feeling guilty about that's playing into my sense of not being able to access the relationships that I need? Because our relationships really need to be nurtured, right? And the only way to ensure that you have the support you need when you need it and to have the connections that you need when you need it is to nurture these relationships, right? And so if I'm feeling guilty for doing that and for taking the time to do that, then they won't be nurtured, right? When we do reach out, many caregivers will express that they feel really misunderstood within their social environment. So the people that are even the closest to you, that maybe you have nurtured those relationships, might not really understand the complexities of caregiving. They might not really understand what you're going through, and they might not understand your feelings of guilt or your feelings, your fears, your anger, your resentment. And so it's difficult often to connect in that way, and will often deepen this feeling of isolation if you're not feeling understood or the extent of your challenges are not feeling appreciated by other people. Another aspect is the shifts in your identity that take place, your sense of self, as you lean into your caregiving role. And this is something we spent a lot of time on in the last 2 weeks, really looking at, who am I and what is important to me and what creates a sense of self. But when we don't pay attention to those pieces, naturally just being involved in somebody else's care and somebody else's experience in such an ongoing way is going to contribute to my connection with myself. And feeling disconnected with yourself is going to naturally cause you to feel disconnected from others. Because who am I within that relationship, right? And the last piece that I want to identify is just the limitations in terms of support networks that exist. So often there are not support networks that are available that are necessarily specific to what your experience as a caregiver, right? So we can all share together here in caregiving in general, but there's obviously different circumstances, different medical conditions, and there isn't always an extensive community support around those specific challenges that you face. Or perhaps it's just not within your geographic region, and so you're not able to connect to those people in person in a way that would be meaningful for you. Some supports require financial investments, and those constraints might prevent you from accessing what you need. So there are often limitations in terms of accessing these support networks that would be meaningful for you. So as we continue our conversation today, I want you to reflect on, and please feel free to share in the chat as well your experience. Which of these factors that we just named do you feel has most impacted your participation within your social circles, your ability to stay connected or engage in the activities that you enjoy? Can anyone share that in the chat with the other caregivers here? Social misunderstanding, I see as a big one. Yeah, just not being understood by those around us. So we have these connections, we have these friends, and they don't necessarily understand us. And so naturally, that's going to cause us to feel, isolated. I see there's another caregiver that shared that I'm the only one in my social circle dealing with such a high level of caregiving for both my parents. They totally don't get it, right? And they might not. And that's a reality that is naturally contributing to my sense of isolation, right? So naming these for ourselves will help us as we move forward in our webinar today to really ascertain what is it that I need to help me feel more connected. I see somebody shared about the guilt. my inability to plan long term. So it's hard to make plans with people long term, more longer term plans. Yeah. Just the practical timing for meeting, just feeling exhausted, right? Not having the energy for it, both the physical and emotional energy for that. I feel I might become very emotional. No time and energy. There's no one to stay home with my husband, and it's hard for me to feel safe to leave, right? So just these practical barriers that stand in the way. And we're gonna talk about those practical barriers as well today. All of the above, I see. Yeah. So just keep in mind for yourself what is my disconnection with my social world about for me. That really helps us map out a plan for ourselves that considers that obstacle and yet works to, work around it. But what's important to remember is that having a need for social connection and the benefit of social connection for us is nothing to feel guilty or bad about. In fact, it's for us one of our basic human needs. To better understand why connection is so crucial, I wanted to visit Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And this is something that many of you might have seen before, but let's just go through it for a minute together. So the first level is our physiological needs, right? Like our food, water, shelter, sleep. This is a basic need as a human that we have. After that is our safety needs. So ensuring our security and stability in our life. And right after that is our social needs, the need for social relationships, for love, for a sense of belonging. This is one of our basic human needs. After we've established these first three areas, we can then lean into our esteem needs and our self-actualization needs. So our esteem needs refer to being able to feel accomplished and recognize this confidence in ourselves and respect for ourselves, right? That's our self-esteem level. And the self-actualization is really being able to lean in to our personal potential and growth. So as caregivers, it's really easy to overlook our social needs level. We often focus primarily on the physiological needs, right? Just these practical physical needs. Do I have this, the things that I need in my environment from a physical sense? And perhaps the safety piece, right? Do I have stability in my environment? And even that's a bit shaky, right? But in order to reach these higher levels of self-development as a person, we have to have these core needs met, including our need for connection. So it's really not something that we can fully just put on the back burner or ignore, because it's a core aspect of your functioning as a human being. It's a basic human need. Our communities and our social support system are really essential for our emotional and psychological well-being, which allows us to develop further into self-actualization. So as humans, we're really wired for connection. Our relationships with others provide us this support and joy and a sense of belonging. So let's try to zoom out for a bit and look at what are the avenues of support that we can really look towards developing for ourselves so that we can meet this really crucial basic need of social connection. You don't have to do it all alone. Find your community and let them help you carry your load. Understanding our support system involves recognizing that social support comes really in many different forms. And I want to look at those pieces together. So we're really expanding our view of what does social support mean? And zooming out and trying to see different aspects of support that can contribute to this basic human need for social connection. So the first is professional support. this might look like, and these are in no specific order. This might look like colleagues that you work with, a mentor you have, a support group for yourself for emotional support, like, the groups that we have through the SCALE program. This would be an aspect of professional support. Different professionals and different levels of support within that professional sphere. Another aspect is familial support. So these are family members who really understand your situation and can offer practical and emotional support. And we might not have supports in every one of these categories, and that's understandable and definitely a really common experience for caregivers. Another layer is cultural and spiritual supports. So that might be community groups that you're a part of, spiritual practices that give you this sense of belonging or purpose, right? Different programmings that you attend that are cultural or spiritual based. And the last one is activity-based support. So that's engaging in hobbies or activities that really bring you joy and bring you connection with other people. So while it's easy to assume that social connectedness occurs only through, really strong relationships with close friends or family members or romantic partners, really our social ties, like our social needs, are filled in ways far beyond these relationships. And some of the examples that I named, they also significantly influence how socially connected we feel, how this need for connection is met. In fact, research has identified that there's a number of categories of connections that can be beneficial to access in order to address feelings of loneliness. So it's not just what we would assume are our really close supports, those people who are really there for us and can help us in a crisis that provides and addresses our loneliness, but rather there's a wider range of social connection, of the way we could define social connection that can be really beneficial for us. I just want to pause for a second and define the word loneliness. So loneliness is actually defined, which I found so interesting when I read it, as the subjective feeling of being disconnected or isolated despite having social interactions. It's distinct from solitude, which is the state of actually being alone, but not necessarily feeling isolated. So in fact, it's a perceived lack of connection across any dimension of our social connections that can lead to us feeling lonely, right? So we can have a really supportive friend and we can still feel lonely, right? We can have a very supportive parent and we can still feel lonely. So I want us to try to refocus our attention on addressing this feeling of loneliness as a refocus to noticing what are the connections that I do have and what are the connections that I want to nurture more, so that we no longer have to feel loneliness in those areas that perhaps, aren't as developed. So we're going to take a few minutes now to do an exercise to help you really visualize your network and who you have within your support system and what are those social connections that provide you with support. It's often very hard to really see where we can strengthen our connections. And I hear from so many caregivers that, I don't have anybody. I don't have anyone to call in this situation or that situation. Or it's really hard for me to connect to this person or that person for different reasons, right? So that's why we want to take this step back and really map out these categories of connections that we have, see where we have strengths, because we all have strengths in some areas of our social connection, and then to identify where the gaps are. Where are there gaps in my network, and what are ways that I can address loneliness that I feel within that network? So breaking it down in that way. So the image that you see right now on the screen of these concentric circles is here to represent the different layers or types of connections in your life. This is really to help you visualize, like I said, what are the various relationships I have and what is the support that I have. So you can go ahead and, draw this on a piece of paper you have. You will, as you can see the icon here, have this image in the workbook that you'll receive as well. And you can really fill in and write for yourself, who are my supports in this area? What are my social connections in this area? So the innermost circle self, just to go through them and what they really represent, this is what we've already really focused on in the last two webinars, where we're, really identifying what makes me me, what makes me tick, what are the things that I enjoy, what are the things that I really want to protect within myself and set boundaries around. So those are the pieces we really looked at the last 2 weeks. So if you need some help to sort of explore what is the self, what is the aspect of self that I want to hold true, then, revisit those last 2 weeks of the webinar 6 and 7. The second circle is our immediate family. So that's that blue, if you can see on the screen, the blue circle. These are our close family members who may already or can possibly provide direct support or direct connection. And I want you to think really small within this area because this is a small circle. It doesn't need a lot to make a significant impact. So we often think of support as something that really holds us up, but there are very small actions that can make a significant difference in how we feel connected to other people. And it's that connection that actually contributes to the loneliness, not necessarily how extensive and how wide those ranges of support reach specifically for our immediate family. The next circle is extended family and close friends. So that's the green circle that you see. And this is relatives or friends who are important to us, but not necessarily as immediate as our immediate close family. The fourth circle is the cultural and spiritual community that we have. So this are groups or communities related to cultural, spiritual, or religious practices. And the outer circle is the activity-based groups, our acquaintances, our professional connections, so all of those areas that we named before in terms of our colleagues, our mentors, our professional networks, our social groups related to hobbies that we do. So I want you again to think about social connection and not practical support, which is where we tend to lean into, especially when we are, overwhelmed and struggling. We think of like, who do I have to call to help me with this specific activity? So if we shift our mind for a minute to social connection touch points within any of these areas, the support can be somebody for you to go out with or that comes to visit you, not necessarily someone who's going to take care of my care recipient, to take them to a medical appointment or something like that, right? That would be really lovely. That would help me. That would give me a break. But this is, we want to shift that focus into the aspects of our connections that cause us to feel this sense of loneliness. And that doesn't come necessarily from who's taking my care recipient to a medical appointment. A person can, have a nice time with a friend or have a Zoom call with a friend and really connect in that way and share how they're feeling, right? Or attend a support group. And that will give them a different sense of energy to be able to then fulfill their caregiving tasks. So try to think, and as we move forward in this exercise, try to notice for yourself, what are ways in which I can connect to people in all of these areas, right? So let's, take the example of our immediate family. If we have family members who are not necessarily involved in our care recipient's life, but there's somebody that I can call and connect to for myself. That's a value in its own right. That's going to provide you and fill this basic need for social support that is about you. It's not about your care recipient. It's not about your caregiving duties. It's about filling your cup in that way. The third circle might be about connecting to friends and, having a friend come over and visit you if you're not able to get out and join, a wider gathering. So take some time for yourself to really look at this and look at where are the touch points, the social touch points that I have throughout the week. What are ways in which I want to, maybe I see, okay, I have a lot of touch points with, cultural and spiritual groups, but I've really lost those touch points with my extended family and friends. And so, how do I want to foster that? What do I notice is missing for myself? And how can I foster that? And so, I'm going to go ahead and give you some examples in that area. But before we get there, can anyone share what they've noticed for themselves in what are some areas in your life that you really notice you can strengthen your connections with? So, some areas of this circle, was it the innermost circle? Was it the outermost circle that you feel you really want to strengthen your social connections from? I see someone shared, I feel many potential connections shift to the ill person, right? But then it takes away from your needs. Yes. And I'm so happy that you identified that, because that is where our attention is, and that is often where we draw in other people's attention to. Even unintentionally, we do this, right? Because we're thinking about who's going to come and visit, my care recipient in order to provide them with some social connection, but we fail to think about what that would give us. So maybe it would give us a break because somebody's sitting with them and I can step out, but we're missing filling our social connection cup, right? So there's this shift in being able to think about, what is it that I need? Where are the connections that I need? I see someone shared today, I side hug one woman for my arthritis group, and the other woman asked, would you like to join her walking group? Right? That's great. So that's a touch point. That's exactly these social connection touch points that we're talking about, right? It's not going to be about, attending these big parties or these social gatherings all the time. Very often for caregivers, it's about these small touch points where we can connect to another person, where we connect to another human and meet this need that we have to fill, right? This social need that we have to fill. I see someone shared activity-based for myself to maintain social connections. And so that's an area that you can identify, okay, this is where I need to focus some energy because I'm feeling isolated, I'm feeling lonely. And when I really map out my social connection map, my circles of connection, I see that this area really is lacking, right? I've forgotten to even ever speak to my friends. I've forgotten to, go to those yoga classes that I used to, or I can't any longer. And so this activity-based support in my life is lacking. And so how do I now fill this need? So you have this in your workbook to go back to fill out this map for yourself. This is really just a starting point to just start looking and thinking about identifying, even just the fact of refocusing to, what are my social needs? How do I want to connect? What aspect of my social circles are missing for me? Just even spending the time to think about that is really beneficial for that refocus on ourselves and our needs. So just to go into more specifically some examples of ways in which we can try to meet some of these these circles of connection. So some examples within the family realm. very often caregivers will share that, there's all these family gatherings and I can't attend. Either they're not wheelchair accessible, or, there are at times that I can't do, or I can't, my care recipients can't, leave the house, or they can't make it to these gatherings, or it's too much for them medically to be around so many other people. And so planning family gatherings in a way that works for you is a touch point that you can create, right? Also looking at possibly improving connections. So making a concentrated effort to reach out to family members regularly, by messaging them, by calling, by asking them to come visit, and really, even sending an email, right? But just maintaining this communication intentionally, right? So let's say you've identified, you know what, I feel like I'm touching some of the other parts of my circles of connection, but my family is really lacking. These are some ways in which you can connect to other people. Another example within the family realm would be to create new traditions. Sometimes, one great example that I heard from a caregiver was that she was housebound and could no longer see her grandchildren. They lived far away. It was difficult for them to come visit. And also because of, the medical impact to her care recipient, she wasn't able to. So she created this project where she divided an activity between the different families. She had a few different families of grandchildren, and she sent little packages to each one of them where they would complete the art and then send it back. And it was like a puzzle where together it made this beautiful image for her. So these are very creative ways, yes, and they might not be the right way for you, but they're creative ways to maintain connections with the outside world, with other people outside of your care recipient. That really feeds this need that we have. So that's within the family realm. Some examples within the social realm would be to join virtual clubs or groups, a sports team, a hobby group, just meeting with other people that have similar interests to us. Another way to meet our social needs is through volunteering. So participating in community services, local events, just an hour or two. It could just look like an hour or two, but really investing in, what would mean something socially for me, right? Another area would be our cultural circle. So if you found that this is an area I want to invest time in, some examples here would be to, make an effort to attend cultural festivals or workshops or classes that really celebrate your heritage or open you up to new cultural experiences. You can join a cultural organization and just, you're getting their newsletters, you're coming on their virtual platforms. Now, after COVID, I think, one of the avenues that COVID really opened up for us is these virtual places where we can meet others. And again, no one of these is going to fill the entire cup, right? And that's really what I want to emphasize. It's these small social touch points that help to address this feeling of loneliness. I could have very close connections and still feel lonely. But when I look at these small touch points and try to grow these small touch points throughout all realms of my social circles, that's when this feeling of loneliness starts to abate. I just want to touch on the other two areas, which is your spiritual connection. So if you've identified for yourself, that's an area that I want, a little bit more social connection in. You can look at regularly attending your religious services or study groups. Again, those are also offered virtually very often. Just connecting with other people, having conversations with somebody who shares in your spiritual faith, volunteering for spiritual causes. And the last area is your professional network. So just attending a networking event, something that you might not have invested time in before, But if you realize, you know what, I really feel like this aspect of myself is missing, this aspect of my connection is missing, then making that concentrated effort when you can. So I'm wondering if anyone can identify any of these that speak to you. If you can share in the chat, are any of these examples something that maybe reminded you of something that you used to do that, you know, now has not been touched upon for a while, or something that you really want to expand on in order to expand on your social circles? I see someone shared, I would love to join a team or a club that meets regularly so I can have friends. Yeah, so you want to identify that for yourself. What is it that might fill, you know, part of my cup? I see somebody sharing examples of different virtual options, taking self-compassion classes online. That's beautiful. So that really can meet some of those, you know, those spiritual aspects of myself, and really meeting those needs and meeting those connection needs. Participate in a not-for-profit organization. So there's all of these aspects of self that we really naturally, you know, end up becoming isolated from as a caregiver, that the only way to shift that is to intentionally invest in that, right? To intentionally say, you know, this is something that I need for myself. This is an area that I need to fill. And where can I fill that? I see someone shared, I find myself chatting with, you know, doctors or other people in the waiting room. These are social touch points, right? They really hold a lot of weight for us in terms of this basic human need of social connection. So we definitely should not take those moments lightly. Those are moments of connection for us. They're moments where we can share with others, and they're creative ways in which we can share with others, because we can't access those typical, you know, social outings that we might have before. And we can't necessarily relate to all of our friends who might not be experiencing life the way we are right now. But when we go to that doctor's office and we're in the waiting room, and that person is also here for, you know, their care recipient with this condition or themselves with that condition, we can connect and we can feed this social need that we have around around connection, right? I want to address, you know, a very understandable and common feeling of there is just no time, right? You might be feeling like, I don't have time for any of this. And I hope that perhaps for some of you, what we discussed earlier might have addressed this concern, knowing how beneficial and important this social part of yourself is, this biological need for connection that we have, right? It's a need for connection that is necessary for our well-being. And I hope that can, you know, motivate you to put some attention here and to carve out time here. But for those of you that are not necessarily yet convinced, or feel like, is this time consuming and unnecessary for me, or unnecessarily time consuming, I should say, you know, when you have very little time, managing loneliness effectively can actually look like integrating, just like we just named at the doctor's office, but trying to think about integrating social connection with your existing routine. So let's say, you know, the one time I get out in the day is that I go for a walk. So then find the neighbor to talk to, you know, that's outside when you take your dog for a walk, right? Becoming friendly with the owner of a local store that you go to, you know, you run in, you run out to quickly do your shopping, but make that connection. Or perhaps have a friend accompany you on the errands that you have to do, right? So some tips in this area overall is scheduling. That would be scheduling regular check-ins. So really setting aside specific times each week where you're going to engage in connection with, you know, specific people that you've identified in these circles, and really being intentional about it. Even a quick message, a 10-minute phone call. They really help us maintain these connections. And when we're so busy, we often do need to schedule that, and that's fine. Put an alarm on your phone. Mondays at 3 p.m., I'm calling this person, I'm sending them a message. And that really helps us keep this connection flowing. Another tip is focus on quality rather than quantity. Try to invest your time in deepening a few important connections to you, a few important relationships, rather than spreading yourself so thin. So we can hit one touch point in each of these social circles. They don't need to be filled, right? Just identifying for yourself what is one touch point that I can really focus on and develop and nurture within different areas of my experience. Another tip is to really be clear about your availability. You can communicate your time constraints, your practical constraints to your friends and family in order to manage their expectations around your availability. This communication is really important to help them be more understanding and be more of a support for you and less of a stress or a hindrance for you. And the last piece is just to prioritize and delegate. So really identify your most important relationships and prioritize them. And do your best to delegate tasks or to adjust other commitments in order to create space for that. And again, we're looking small. We're looking for small connection points, small places of consistency, just a small group of people that we are connecting to. And that really makes a difference in this area. So the last piece I just want to share is how to set SMART goals in these areas in order to make this a reality. So some of you have named in the chat, and for those of you who haven't, need some more time to think about it or haven't shared, how do I set goals within the areas that I've identified I need the connection with? How do I set these goals? So make sure to be, SMART goals is an acronym. The S is for specific. Make sure to be specific and clearly define for yourself what action you are going to take to improve the connection in this area. I am going to call this old friend of mine Mondays at 3, like I identified before, and talk to her for 10 minutes or share one thing that happened. I'm going to send a picture to one friend each week. You know, that's if we're focusing on the friend circle, right? So be really specific in terms of what action you're going to take. The M is for measurable. So determine, how am I going to measure progress in this area, right? Am I going to know that I've quote unquote succeeded in addressing the social need by the fact that I have made the phone call, the weekly check-in, I've joined the new group, you know, I've researched online and found a virtual support group, right? What is it that can allow you to measure that you've accomplished this goal for yourself? Then the A is for achievable. So really ensure that the goal is realistic, right? Some of you have shared, I can't leave the house. How am I supposed to connect with people? So make sure it's achievable. Find that virtual option, right? Find the person who's going to come visit you. The R is for relevant. So make sure the goal really aligns with your overall needs. So the area of social connection that you've identified is really lacking in those circles. And the T is for time bound. So really set a time frame for achieving the goal. So, you know, by the end of the day, I'm going to call my friends. By the end of the day, I'm putting it into the calendar. By next week, I'm going to make sure to get together with at least one person or attend one exercise class or whatever it is. So as we end for today, I just want to invite you to share in the chat. Can any of you identify a SMART goal, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, related to improving your circle of connection in your life that you can really focus on improving? I see someone says that they are making goals by setting and following an agenda and not overloading the schedule, right? That's great. Start small, really small, and just focus on, you know, one or two pieces that I am going to do. I'm setting a goal to reach out to 2 friends on a weekly basis, and I'm going to track it in my weekly planner. That is a beautiful SMART goal, really specific, really achievable, very time bound. I'm looking into joining a choir, I see. So try to set for yourself, what are the ways in which I am going to meet that goal? Be really specific and measurable, right? I'm going to contact, my local community center, this friend who I know is part of a choir, and this location in order to see whether they have any options for me, right? So that would be how to turn that desire into a SMART goal. I just sent emails to 2 friends to get a games night going. That's amazing. Perfect, right? There we are. You've already taken action on your SMART goal. I see meal planning and prepping gives me much needed sense of accomplishment. Not to mention when we have a difficult week, there are meals or snacks already made that lighten the load. So achieving that, would look like, how do I want to set that as a SMART goal? What are the ways in which I'm going to make that happen? How am I scheduling that into my time? And just to touch on this social connection piece that we're looking at today, how can I maybe make that into a social activity for me? What can I do there? Can I plan that when I'm preparing those meals, I put my friend on FaceTime and I'm doing it with her, right? While she's cooking for her family. So these are some great examples. And in the workbook that you'll receive, we also really map out this idea of SMART goals, and how to and break it down into those categories, so you can really note that down for yourself and check in with yourself about how you're meeting that goal for yourself. So take a look at the workbook, take a look at these resources that we've included there as well, in terms of ways to grow your motivation for social connection, your understanding of yourself within your social environment, and then continue to reflect as well through the self-discovery questions about your circle of connections, what needs to be nurtured, and how you're going to be able to develop that further. So as we conclude today's session and our 8-week series, I want to thank you for joining. I want to thank you for taking the time and making the space for your well-being. I want to thank you for the care that you provide to your care recipient and the kindness that you are putting into the world with all the care that you are giving. Um, and I want to remind you that you're not alone in this journey. I'm hoping that the last 8 weeks, you've really been able to recognize that you have a community of caregivers that share in your experiences, that understand your emotions, and that are here to provide you with support as you navigate the world of caregiving. So I hope, if nothing else you gained from this program, I hope at least that you can now say, I am no longer alone. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Michal, for that and this important discussion surrounding loneliness and connection. We really appreciate all the tools that you gave us to get started. We are running a little behind, so I'm just going to jump into a few questions before we sign off. The first one, I took a couple of comments and put them together. So I just wanted to share a few caregiver comments about activities that they are thinking about adding or have added to their life, especially if they're kind of doing this on their own. One caregiver shared that her sister encouraged her to start crafting again, and it's been a really great creative outlet for her. Another shared that connecting with her local library was very meaningful. She mentioned they have a lot of in-person and virtual ways to connect. And I just wanted to remind everyone in the room too that OCO has a wonderful peer support program where you can talk one-on-one with a peer mentor for a 6-month period, and then also online support groups that meet twice a month. So there are those great options as well. Okay, and then one comment that I just wanted to bring up. I'm wondering if you can say something to this. One of the caregivers commented, is anyone else looking at this, the social circle, and thinking, I don't need to draw a circle. It's just me. because there is no one. Can you speak to the caregivers who feel so very alone in their caregiving role? Where might they start?
Yeah. And so that's why I really emphasize that we often tend to think of social support as practical support, right?
Mhm.
Rather than connection with others, right? Meeting our social need for connection, not our care recipients, right? Our social need for connection, um, and our social environment, right, in our community. So we often think of having people within our caregiving role as having people to practically help us.
Mhm.
But that's not what contributes to loneliness, right? What contributes to loneliness is not having our social needs met. So not having the practical support contributes to overwhelm, right? It definitely impacts our life, but that's not what's causing us to feel lonely within that role. I can navigate a lot practically, right? And I can navigate even more practically when I have my social needs, that basic need met. I can accomplish more. I can connect myself. I can have more self-esteem when that social need is met. So, yes, it's really challenging to not have that practical support, feel really alone in navigating the practical aspects of caregiving. But what we're trying to look at and turn our mind to is the social connection. And
Mhm.
that looks like the stranger that we walk past while we're both walking our dog in the park every day. That doesn't need to be the people that we know well, right? It can be people in our environment, in our community that we do an activity with, that we, engage with around a hobby, right? So I would encourage them to take some of the examples that I gave today and think really, and that the other caregivers shared, right? In terms of the other caregivers in the waiting room or, the person in the store. So those are ways in which we can connect socially. Those are ways in which we can expand and jot down some pieces within our circle. I hope that answers that question.
Yes, and I appreciate you bringing home that piece again about the social connection versus the practical support. I think it
Yeah,
is really hard to disentangle them, but yeah,
100%.
you make a really good point there.
Yeah.
Um, if it's okay if we have time for one more question.
Yeah.
One caregiver wrote, my husband is not thrilled when I go out and do things for myself. How
Mhm.
should I respond to him?
Mhm. So I would say that really is about those boundaries that we spoke about last week, right? About identifying for yourself, like, what are my core needs? So we know that social connection is a core need, but identify for yourself what aspect of social connection is my core need. Do I fill this need when I go to the grocery store and I, meet somebody, buy the fruits, and we just start talking for a few minutes? Is that going to meet my need? Or do I need to have an outing with a friend or have a coffee, once a week with somebody or a walk with somebody in order to meet that need? So I would start by identifying for yourself, what is it that I need to protect that gives me a feeling of feeling grounded and secure in my world and will allow me to do my job as a caregiver. So when I can identify this is the aspect of my social connection I need to fill, then what it becomes about is setting that boundary and being really clear with your care recipient that I need this for myself, and I'm sorry that that it's uncomfortable for you or that you don't like being alone. But when we identify that that's a need for us, it's a lot easier to be clear in that way.
Yes, thank you so much. Really appreciate that. And I just want to echo something that was written in the chat here. Mihal, you are so gifted. Bless your heart.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
It's my
Please,
pleasure. I'm so happy and I'm so, grateful that I got to be a part of this program and whatever I'm able to share. And again, even if there's small nuggets that you were able to gain from the program, it warms my heart.
Yeah, thank you so much. Your knowledge and even just the way you speak and, your examples, they've been so helpful. Really appreciate it. As we mentioned earlier, this is the last webinar in the series, but don't worry, we'll be coming back in the fall. I think I've said I've done this now maybe 6 times. I learn something new every time. So hopefully we'll see you in the fall.